Welcome to 2024 and back to Junction 119. This is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And Happy New Year, my friend. How were the holidays? We're back after a week off and literally a bunch of stuff happened. So it's going to be more of a catch-up show than anything else. But the first things first, how are all the festivities for you?
Good, good. Yeah, it was fun. I had a pretty extended break from work, so it was nice, relaxing time. I got to hang out and do a lot with friends, and it was a good time.
Cool, cool. I did too, amazingly, even with what I do. So I was happy at least to get some time off and was able to make it back to Pittsburgh, spend some time with my mom and others, and see some folks. And it was great to see. I gotta ask, did you get anything cool for the holidays, Casen? That you would
Anything
that would
cool?
like did you get any
And
cool gifts that you would disclose on the cast? Because I have one.
um, yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, you don't have to. I one of my favorite books of all time that I recommend to anyone who will read it. It's probably a little bit dated by today's standards, but it's called Marvel Comics: The Untold Story, and it's like
Mhm.
the inside. I may have even mentioned it on our show before. It's like the inside information story, essentially the biography from the very beginning of Marvel Comics that tells like all like the story of young Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve
Mhm.
Ditko, and like all of those guys from the very beginning. The reason I say it's a bit dated is because it came out in like 2013. I remember I read it in college, so obviously there's been 10 years worth of stuff happened, obviously. Well, there's a new book called that's about the rise of the MCU. I'm looking at it from here. I think it's literally just the Hollywood reign of like the MCU. I forget exactly what the full title is, but it's essentially the same thing, but it's the biography of how the film series has gone and the
Mhm.
last 12 years of the MCU, and it apparently goes up to today. So kind of the uncertain future right now of the MCU. Of course, I think it's fair to say that it is pretty uncertain right now. Uh, but that's one of the gifts I got. I love reading nonfiction if you're me. So shout out to my mom for that very thoughtful gift among others. And yeah, I'll have to report back at some point how I feel about it. But yeah,
Great, great.
yeah,
That's
but
awesome.
we're gonna there's gonna be a little bit of pop culture at the end of the show because I didn't put this in our lineup, Cason, but I did see a movie in my time in between our shows that I'll briefly review on here, but that's not going to be till the very end. There's also a couple other things that intersect with sports and pop culture, but we're going to talk about football mainly today because we've got to catch up. The playoff has begun and really halfway over.
Mhm.
I don't know how you put it. Uh, the two first semifinal games have happened. We're going to do some NFL catch up, and then of course we're going to wrap it up with of the weeks. But to be honest, Casey, there's some probably some early of the weeks I have to give. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
so why don't we do this in order, man? I mean, Rose Bowl. We had on New Year's Day. We had the Rose Bowl first between the number one ranked Michigan Wolverines and the number four ranked, controversially, if it is for some, Alabama Crimson Tide.
I mean, do you want to start it at the playoff games, or you want to get into a couple of the other bowl games first?
You know, let's go. You know what? That's a good question. Let's go a couple other bowl games. We'll do this in order because
Okay,
I think
okay.
because I did want to shout out Bowling Green to start. BG, our alma mater. Nice hat case. Is that new? Looks new.
Yeah, I got this at a certain store in town. Uh and I actually went there on my way to the bowl game.
Yeah, yeah.
So I picked this up pregame.
Good call. Good call. To just talk about this then first. Ultimately, BG I thought played an adequate game, but fell against the University of Minnesota. I want to say it was a 6 point game. Sorry, I got to get that up on my
It
screen. Yep,
was
30
it,
to
it
24.
was
Yep.
Yep. It was a good game. I mean, yeah, it was a good game. We were missing some of the key guys
Hmm.
due to transfers or whatever. I mean, we were missing a couple guys. Minnesota didn't really have a quarterback. They were playing some bench guy who they had to pay to play because he was basically graduated and moving to Arizona.
Yeah, they
Um,
weirdly went into a long. He was like one of the main stories going into pregame. The fact that he had like essentially postponed wedding planning
yeah,
to play this game. So that was a weird story. But again, those are the
yeah.
stories you're going to see during bowl season going forward, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it. they knew, the passing was not a threat for them in that game. It's just they were able to run it completely, down our throats, and not much we could do about that. But yeah, I mean, we were very competitive with the Power Five team. Can't ask for much more.
Bowling Green did like when I kind of diverged to like I actually ended up leaving to go watch this movie I'm going to review later on, Casen. When I left, it was a pretty much in hand. I thought Minnesota pretty much had it, and then I saw Bowling Green scored a couple more touchdowns in the fourth quarter to bring it closer. I'm like, well, we tried. I'm like, we tried to bring it back, but either
Mhm.
way, my takeaways are a successful season for the Falcons. Again, we're inching. We were, I think, by far probably the third best team in the MAC this year. If not, we were top four, and we're
Yeah,
trending.
I
We're
think I
trending the
think they
right
would
way.
we would say fourth because we got annihilated at home and homecoming by Ohio.
Yeah,
So I think we'd be fourth behind Ohio, but maybe say that was a bit of a fluke and we're pretty even with that. So yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely a threat to make Detroit if things continue trending the next way for next year. So
I agree.
yeah,
I agree. I got to be honest with you, Kason. This was outside of the games I really cared about, of which Syracuse got shut out by USF. I thought this was a pretty forgetful bowl season all the way around. And what's interesting is every conversation that I had with people in public or otherwise over the holiday season, everyone agreed on the same thing. Everyone had like the same take. It was like, whether you went to a bar or restaurant or whatever, friends, it's like, look, I care about my game, but I haven't watched like, I'll watch a bowl if it's on or something like that. But it just seemed like the apathy of bowl season has never been higher. And I think it's an absolute sign of what's to come, uh, especially with the transfer portal and just the fact that it's not full teams. And so many
yeah,
of the games are just going to cease to matter now. And I felt it this year more than any other year. And I only think it's going to get worse with the 12.
yeah. I mean, it's a combination of there are more guys than ever sitting out for the draft. There's people sitting out because they're in the portal. I mean, we had some tough injuries that would have made bowl games more interesting. But yeah, it just generally felt like very few of the programs really actually cared
Mhm.
about it. Like obviously, you have your programs like Bowling Green and your lower level programs that, really actually do care about bowl games
Mhm.
because it a bowl win is a big thing for the team.
It is, especially when teams are
But
building.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, exactly. Is that another month of practice is huge for programs. And yeah, I mean, you have games like Tulane or the Tulane Virginia Tech game where it would have been a much better game had their starting quarterback been playing, but he didn't, so they got blown out 41-20.
Weirdly enough, I
Uh
was watching that game early. I'm serious. And it was actually
yeah.
a decent game. And I was sitting here thinking, well, on paper, Tulane's a better team if everyone's playing, but not everyone's playing. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Um
yeah, I did want to point
yeah.
out, I did want to talk about this just because I just thought that I actually did get to also watch a decent amount of this game for what action there was in it. But Missouri, Ohio State, I could have mistaken that for an Iowa, Ohio State game, just with the very little amount of scoring. I mean, it was 3-0 Buckeyes going into the fourth quarter, literally.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean that one, yeah, you had most of the game was played by a dude who was in high school 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean,
I
obviously Ohio State should have won that game, but
I will admit there was a part of me that put a bit of an old hat on. I thought the whole thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. was weird. The fact that he was there, sitting out of the game, but there in person to like support his guys. I just thought that was a really weird look by him.
yeah, but that's happened before. That's happened before where the dudes that are sitting out for the draft are just there with them. Like
Yeah, I mean,
typically if you're like a lock to be a first, 5, 10 pick, they're generally there and like no one really cares because they're like, yeah, dude, go get that
yeah,
bag.
but they kept showing him, and
Um,
he was on the sideline.
I sort of remember the same storyline with Zeke and
Ezekiel
one of the
Elliott.
Bosas. I
No,
think I'm
it would
trying
have
to
been the Bosa's
remember.
because Ezekiel Elliott, his final game was a winning against Oregon in the national championship game.
No, he came back.
Did he come back?
Yeah,
Really?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he did.
I
But
don't
yeah,
remember.
because
But either way,
his rookie year was that 2016 season with Dak,
oh,
and
that's
so
right.
because he came back,
That's right. Because he came back.
they were very mediocre and lost to Michigan State the next year, and then he was like, "All right, bye, I'm gone."
Yeah, that's right. He did come back. That's
Because
right. Because
they on paper thought would have a chance to repeat.
the best MSU team literally ever happened the next year. One of them.
Yeah.
I do want to point out though, not the best look. I think it's I don't know how to feel about it because my thoughts are if you're there, you should be playing. If you cared enough to come in and stay with the guys and hang out with the program, I don't know. I know he'll get like a huge pass from the from like the fan base and everything like that. But this was like the first year where I was like, I don't know if like I wouldn't want to necessarily even be seen on camera, even if I'm there. You know, I'd almost rather watch it from a box or something. But I don't know. It's like the only time he'll be in this situation, so I guess it doesn't matter.
I mean,
So,
it's not just him. I mean, Caleb Williams didn't play against Louisville.
no,
I mean,
yeah.
it's any of the. I mean, guys that are going to be in the top 5 pick generally don't play.
Oh,
Like they just don't.
and they shouldn't play. I'm not saying that. It's just like again, weird look when you're just on the sideline. Also, but I had a few other
Yeah,
people say
yeah,
that too, and I'm like, yeah. I do want to talk about the Georgia Florida State destruction that happened. Uh, I'll,
yeah.
I'll I'll be in the Orange Bowl. I got to be real with this one. It went basically exactly how people thought. It's funny because I was looking at the lines for the game and everything, and Georgia was something like 20-point favorites or whatever, and I was like, that seems low.
23 and a half. Yeah.
I literally said that out loud when I'm like 23 and have them like I'm like, they're probably going to win this by at least 40. And they won it 63 to 3. They won it by 60. I was off by 20 points. Listen,
Yeah.
I appreciated what Kirby Smart said in the post game because we all know what the storyline was going into that game and most likely what the storyline was going to be going out of that game. But when like 25 dudes opt out to even play and literally like leave the school, Florida State, it's like, well, no, you're not going to beat Georgia. It's not even going to be a competitive game, but like that was a New Year's Six game. You know what I mean? Like that was a New Year's Six game that ended 63 to 3, where the main storyline afterwards is this is what college football looks like now, with guys opting out to not play in these games. We're in a situation where Georgia argued that like maybe they shouldn't even necessarily either one of them should have been there because still arguing that they're playoff teams, and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
outright said it's not even fair that like that team out that those guys had to play my guys like that.
Yeah. Look, here's my thing. I don't think this is as much of an indictment on college football. I think this is an indictment on. I, he's a good coach, but this is an indictment on Mike Norvell's culture and his program.
Mm.
Where the second that you guys are pissed because you know feel like you were slighted, the entire program folds and they have to walk into a game against Georgia with 60 walk-ons.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing when half of your program is opting out or transferring or they're not playing? Like, you guys had a chance to go in there and actually look competitive against. I mean, obviously, without Jordan Travis, it was going to be a struggle, but you had a chance to go and prove you belonged on the same field as Georgia. And instead, half the locker room decided to quit, leave, opt
Man.
out, not play, whatever you want to say, to the point where they didn't look like they belonged in the same sport. Like,
I'm
like
sorry.
what are you doing?
I'm starting to start chuckling, but that is a very good way to put it, Casen.
Like, anybody in the state of Florida that says any further word about the playoff committee, about the national championship, about them being robbed, forfeited. They have forfeited their right the second they went out there and just acted like they didn't care at all.
Yeah,
Like
this is
this is the Orange Bowl. Like the Orange Bowl used to mean something.
yeah.
Like, you're on there playing on the same field against a team that probably had a very good shot of three-peating had they been invited into the playoff and not lost to Alabama. That's a whole different situation, and we'll get to that.
Mhm.
But this team probably should have won the national championship again. And you had the right to play them. And if you would have beaten them, gone 14-0, beating Georgia, saying, hey, you know, UCF type of title here, like we deserve this title because we beat a team that won the last two titles.
They would have
So
claimed.
they had the
They would have
chance.
claimed it. They would have claimed the national
They
championship.
had the chance. But that is what happens when you have mentally weak players with a very, very fraudulent locker room and fraudulent roster of players.
You know what,
So
man?
I think this to me, I feel nothing about Florida State anymore. I kind of felt bad, but I do not. I feel bad for some of the fans, but any of the fans under 10 years old that didn't see the 2013 team, I feel bad for. But the rest of them that got to at least experience Jameis and all that stuff, remember that, okay? Remember that. Remember the 80s and 90s. This team is fraudulent.
You know what?
Fraudulent. They deserve nothing. I feel bad. I do not feel bad for them at all.
You got way more heated about that than you've gotten about a lot of topics on our cast, and so I almost feel like that was in response to like some takes from other fans over the holidays.
You do not get to threaten lawsuits against
No, you don't.
the playoff committee as allegedly serious politicians and have this team go out and do that.
You know, I think first of all, that's a really good take. Everything you just said, I somewhat echo it. I mostly agree. I will say that it's what's a worse look. Like I was asking this question too. It's actually a much more. You're so right about this. It's a much worse look when that many guys say, "Okay, we didn't get in, so I'm leaving. I'm leaving the school. Let alone like leaving the conference. I don't play about this game." It says a lot about the mental fortitude, but it also in a lot of ways, it shows like you're exactly what everyone said. You know what I mean? Like you're right. I don't think enough people have pointed that out in the media or elsewhere of like, well, instead of like having that be the situation, what can we talk about how like very few other of these teams of this caliber have seen a mass exodus like that. I mean, in a lot of ways, they're having to rebuild from the beginning starting next year because that much talent leaves. And they're still in the ACC. And the other thing is, this is out of Florida State's control. But the fact that they in a lot of people's eyes, got snubbed means that you're going to have, I think, a harder time getting that caliber of transfer to come in because it's like we can go 13-0. I'm not making it to the final.
I am going to single out one person here.
Mm-hmm.
This loss is laid at the feet of Tate Rodemaker.
Okay. Who is
Tate
that?
Rodemaker?
Mm-hmm.
Tate Rodemaker was the backup quarterback behind Jordan Travis.
Mm.
He started after Jordan Travis got injured. He got injured and wasn't able to play in the ACC championship game. And it was Brock Glenn, the guy who played in the Orange Bowl. I think he was a true freshman. Tate Rodemaker would have he would have been fine. He was supposed to be cleared to play in the Orange Bowl, but instead he said, "No, I'm leaving. I'm transferring."
Yeah, he was one of the opt-outs. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You're the backup quarterback at Florida State, and you're gonna start in the Orange Bowl, and your response is, "Never mind. I'm gonna,
Well, hang on. Here's where I disagree with you. Think back to what I just said. And here's the thing. I think that's ridiculous. Do these players of this caliber not have been hearing the fact that the playoff is going to expand to 12 teams next year? Again, because I was just about to catch my own self saying you sent the message to this locker room that you can go 13-0 in the ACC and you can't get in over like an Alabama anymore. So an 18 to 21 year old is going to see that and compute it as, oh, I'm going to leave anyway because I can get into another Power 5 in a Big Ten or an SEC that can make sense with what's going to happen now. But if you're Norvell or these other people, you're like, guys, if you stay here, we're probably making the playoff next year. It's 12 teams. It's not the same playoff next year. So you're right. I think a lot. Honestly, I kind of caught myself, and I agree with you more actually at the end of my take here. I think you're right. It's sort of like why are you leaving Florida State, which is in a healthy place? It's weird.
I'm not even. Maybe he left because is Jordan Travis in the draft? I don't know. Is he going to come back? I don't know. Either way, he must have gotten some inkling that he wasn't going to be the starter next year, and so he wanted to go find a spot for him to start. I get that, but if you leave, if you willingly just hit the portal, leave, don't contribute to your team's pretty important New Year's Six bowl game, then to me, I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want you on my roster. I don't want you visiting my campus.
Nope.
Because that to me tells me you don't care about your teammates. You don't care about winning. You don't care about playing. You're playing the two-time defending national champions who probably would have won it again this year if they were in it. That is the highest of highest levels of competition that you can get. And you're just, nah, I don't want it.
I'm listening to Jordan Travis.
I'm going to transfer to Boston College. I'm going to transfer to Vanderbilt.
Jordan Travis is going to the NFL. I will say this. I think this is a sign though of your death now. I mean, you literally sat here on this podcast in a shirt, tie, and we're saluting the death of the ACC. I mean, this could be the first block of that exact thing happening.
This to me tells me the ACC as a conference has no football culture. The only team
at least
in
beyond
the entire beyond two programs. That is it. Any program outside of Clemson, and I guess by definition you could say Miami,
Louisville.
Well,
I'm just going back. I'm just spitballing like recently good programs.
I was gonna say cares about football as a sport.
Florida State, obviously,
is
part of that.
I said this a while ago, sort of in jest, in the heyday of the Jimbo era at Florida State, at the tail end of when Jimbo was getting fired there.
Yeah,
Florida State, is not a relevant program anymore. I mean,
well, it has been for 1 year out of the last 10.
I'm not even saying good. I'm not saying good. I'm saying relevant. You can be good and irrelevant.
That's true.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I feel like it depends on what your definition is by that, and I don't want to get too into the weeds on this, but it depends on what your definition by relevant is. Because are you indicating that one good year does not relevant?
I'm going to say
you need stringing together good years.
Yes, I'm saying New Mexico State. I'm saying, in the G5 conversation, New Mexico State, good year, completely irrelevant program.
Whereas Tulane, very relevant program. As using Group of Five as an example.
Tulane had a good year last year. They have they were originally a founding member of the SEC, so. They have a historical background of being relevant, but Florida State has so far gone from being dominant and they're actually caring about the program. As far as nationally goes, I don't know, this is probably a hot take. I get it, but I'm just saying that when you're at the point where half of your roster is opting out of an Orange Bowl against a could-be national champion team, your program doesn't matter anymore.
After you moaned and complained for all that time.
After you moaned and complained for 2 weeks about not being in there.
And as you said, your fans were suing the league, all that stuff. So anyway,
and you're trying to sue the conference to get out of it because you think that they're the reason you didn't get in.
Right.
This is the reason you didn't get in.
Well,
a team full of quitters.
Another reason they didn't get in, and this is a good transition, is because I think Florida State would have gotten absolutely waxed by all 4 of the teams in this playoff. Because I gotta say, one of my early of the weeks that I'll give out is last laugh of the week, because I'll tell you who gets the last laugh, this college football playoff committee, because out of this brief existence of 10 years, we've had this 14 playoff, of which it's going away next year and we're getting 12. This might be one of the best years for it if the national championship is as good as these 2 games were. And I was sitting here thinking to myself, it took 10 years, but I think it's almost like we figured out the formula. Do you want to get into the Rose Bowl? Talk about this?
Yeah. I mean, I just had one quick brief
Sure.
note again about a New Year's Day game.
Sure.
What was that? The Liberty and Oregon. I mentioned yeah, Liberty didn't belong there either.
Oh,
So
to me that was the
that's
most
bad.
irrelevant bowl of the New Year's Six. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the
Which
biggest nothing.
again, counter to my argument, Bo Nix played in that bowl game
He
and
did.
he just torched Liberty
He,
to death.
he did. And to be honest, Bo Nix probably wasn't a guy who needed to, but he did anyway.
No, absolutely not. He probably shouldn't have. But
Uh,
he still went up there,
but
went 28 of 35, 363, and 5 tutties.
but do you see
Like,
do you see what I mean though now that the New Year's Six games don't matter either? Like I heard no one really talking about this stuff outside of the stuff that we've picked apart here. I mean, I wasn't excited for really any of the New Year's Six games. I would have been if I
I
was
think the only game outside of uh, I, I think the Peach Bowl was probably like the best game out of the New Year's Six games.
which one was that one?
The Ole Miss Penn State.
Oh, that was the Peach Bowl. Yeah, I mean that again, solid enough. Ole Miss, strikes another iron for the SEC over the Big Ten. But again, like the year to year, bowl results is just not something that I think anyone really cares or pays attention to. But again,
Yeah.
kind of a nothing game. Like I don't know.
Also, Iowa, by the way.
The one thing, right? Iowa scored 0 points and lost 35-0 against Tennessee. It's shocking. But I did want to say this though. It will be cool when next year all of these are playoff games, and the winners
Yeah.
and the winners go on again. These are all these. The one thing about the New Year's Six that I was saying to everybody was all these New Year's Six caliber games are playoff games next year.
Yes. And I think hopefully my hope is that with the playoffs on the line, dudes will not transfer until after.
No, they won't.
Like
Yeah.
that if you can keep like if you're gonna stay and play, well, as long as your season's alive, like come on, what are we doing?
I also think that, and I'm dead serious about this. I also think you got to, if I do think we're going to see in the future the college football season kick off mid-August because I really believe that.
Yeah.
I really think we're the beginning of the season in a few years is going to be moved up 2 weeks because the length that the champion is going to have to play is going to be unjustifiable to make college kids play an NFL schedule without some significant changes. So
You're gonna need a second bye, probably.
yeah, you're going to need gonna need
But
a second bye, even maybe in the season, but you're going to have to start the season earlier, like you just are.
sure. But my question is, I don't know how much further you could go because you can't start college football before college kids are on campus.
Right. Right. What I'm saying is we're going to see a future where that no longer matters. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Because it arguably no longer matters now. Like I'm that's one of my predictions is I really think that like that argument's going to be made by certain major institutions and then everyone's just going to go along with it because it means you can get more revenue. Because think about it, it fills up with random fans anyway. I mean, you don't necessarily, the student section is just one
Yeah.
piece at these really big places. I can see certain conferences doing it and certain conferences saying no, but I absolutely
I
think
would say at a minimum, everybody's going to start basically on when week 0 is now.
Mhm.
It's at least always going to be moved up to that. I think that would
and
like
week 0 is going to
yeah.
start having really significantly big matchups. Like
Yeah.
because usually week 0 is a bunch of nothing games. Week 0 is going to start to be the week 1 going forward. But
Yeah.
Regardless,
Because you're gonna want like all of summer camp to practice for that game.
Let's get into Alabama, Michigan because
Mhm.
I really do want some time to talk about both these games in length. First of all, I got to see mostly all of both of these games. The reason I say mostly all is because there were times when I tuned out. I was doing things around the apartment.
Mhm.
But great games. I mean, I'll be honest. I'd have to sit here and I say I was wrong. I was totally wrong because I was very, very confident that I thought Alabama was going to win the Natty, not just this, but the Natty. And Michigan.
I think you were not alone. There were a lot of people feeling that.
I was sitting here saying I could tell you what I think might happen, but I'm telling you what's going to happen is Alabama's going to win the national championship, and that is not what happened. I was wrong. Michigan's for real. I got to say, I kept waiting for over the course of this game for the Tide to take over. And there were a couple of times, especially in that third quarter, I thought, okay, like the next score is going to really determine. I think there was a one point with like five. No, it was like, no, it was with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I remember Alabama was up like 17-13. And like you had that Michigan drive. And it was like, actually, I think Alabama kicked a field goal. I remember when they didn't score a touchdown on that drive, it was like, oh, if they had scored a touchdown there, I think Alabama could have closed it out, but they didn't. Michigan went the length the other side, and that was where it was like, oh, overtime looks real here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it definitely was really weird because it was all or all four of these teams had some pretty sloppy moments
Yeah,
on the night. Particularly the Rose Bowl was relatively sloppy between both teams at times.
you could tell.
Like
You could tell a month had
you had
gone
a
by.
lot of special teams issues on Michigan side
Yeah,
that
they couldn't
they
catch.
had the fumbled snap on the extra point. You had muff punts. You had a lot of weird stuff.
Dude,
And for whatever reason, the greatest college football coach of all time didn't see a problem with putting out a center who literally cannot snap the football.
nope. Yep, or
The
yeah, he did.
entire game,
Yep.
the entire game, you had low snaps, just completely wild snaps. Like it was crazy.
And it's only poetic that that literally is what ended the game.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was hilarious when that happened.
The entire day, I was just like, that's certainly
Snapped
going
it
to be a
directly
problem.
at his feet. And then it's like, oh, okay, it's just, it was funny because the play didn't even end. And I said out loud, I was like, oh, it's over then. Because that's a fourth down. The play wasn't
Now,
even over. And I was like, oh, it's over.
I am not going to torture the kid because he's probably most likely currently 27 miles away from me right now at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. But the he's currently in Columbus on a visit to transfer to Ohio State.
The center?
Hope yeah.
Wow.
Hopefully he would be moved to guard, but that because he should have no business snapping the
Right.
football
It's more
anymore.
like, hey, coaching did you in on that one, dude. I wouldn't even necessarily put that on him.
Yeah, yeah.
I will say
Well,
this.
he had issues all year. Like
Right.
he had snap issues against Texas.
Dude, I gotta give an early of the week here, an early one. Near miss of the week. Jake Thaw. Do you know who that is?
Enlighten me.
That is the punt returner for Michigan who nearly blew the entire season. Who
Yeah,
easily, and
yeah,
I mean easily,
yeah,
this whole story could have easily been about him. I think he is very, very lucky in a clutch moment that the entire country doesn't know his name right now. Because
yeah,
for that, because I thought that was the moment. I thought, oh my, this is the moment. Like when that happened, I think everyone in the building thought, oh wow, Alabama just won. But no, he's able to collect it. He's able to get a knee down. And I thought at very least he had just taken it into the end zone for a safety. But no, he was down on the 1 yard line. But I remember thinking when that happened, I'm like, if Michigan goes on to win this game, that dude is gonna like he's gonna feel the wind off the bullet he just dodged. And he
yeah.
definitely did. Um anyway, that I wanted to talk about that just in this game and not in other weeks because I had to mention
So
it.
I need to remember how this happened. So, uh, okay. So basically the game. So that was with 35 seconds left.
Yes.
Uh, and so he just barely did not. Okay. So now I got it. So that was the last drive of regulation. Was that? Yeah.
Alabama would have won. Straight up.
I
You got
this
the
this
safety there or a
game,
touchdown.
yeah, this game completely changed when Jalen Milroe fumbled on when they were up 17-13. They were driving, they were about at midfield, and when Jalen Milroe fumbled the ball to give it back
Yep.
to Michigan, it felt like the momentum kind of was gone.
Oh, it swung.
Michigan lost or missed the field goal anyway, but it felt like they failed to step on their throat. They failed to really like continue fighting because if they had gone up, would it be 24 13, then it probably would have felt a lot more out of reach at that point. But
That, like I said,
I
that was
mean,
the moment where I thought, oh, Alabama's about to take over. It didn't happen. I got to be honest. I will, and I got to give a shout out where it's due. Michigan looked great in that overtime, all the way from the rushing plays,
yeah,
from the play calls, and Alabama's play calling wasn't really that terrible either. They just, they were trying to use their rushing game too, and they just weren't as good at it. But Michigan played great defense, and
yeah,
they got their touchdown. And I still thought Alabama. I thought we were in for more overtimes. I thought, oh, this thing's going to go like 2, 3 overtimes. It's going to be instant classic more than it already is. When it
yeah.
when it was 3rd and goal for 15 yards away for Alabama, I was thinking to myself, if Alabama doesn't like score here, they may not. And then of course they get like a 13-yard play, and I was like, oh, so is this going to be like Auburn? And then the next play happened. It was like, nope, it's over.
Yeah, and exactly the way you said that is that the overtime, like it was essentially like the first half was mostly Michigan, the second half was mostly Alabama, and then slightly Michigan like sort of pulled back even right at the end of regulation, and then it was all Michigan in overtime.
And in reality, Auburn was one Alabama offensive mistake from beating them. So it was almost like a better team was able to shut them
I,
down.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, look, here's the thing. Alabama was definitely they were definitely a top 10 team this year, but they had no business beating Georgia to belong in this game. Like that,
I
like
disagree with that, but Alabama,
sorry,
they beat
let me
Georgia.
rephrase. Let me rephrase.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia had no business losing to this Alabama team
That's more
to
like it.
miss out on the playoff. That's what I meant. That like this Alabama team
Yeah.
lost to Georgia, like or beat Georgia. Like, what are you talking
Well,
about?
also this Georgia team wasn't as good as the previous 2 years either, though. So, bottom line, SEC, we have an SEC list, national championship game for like the first time, I think, since 2014. Is that right? Since like the first year of the playoff, there's probably been another one in there somewhere.
I
Where it was
think
Ohio
no.
State and
I
Oregon
well championship game, but
championship
yeah,
game.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so because
Uh, yeah,
it's been Alabama or Georgia. I think the whole or LSU the whole time.
yeah.
Um,
So I got to ask, are you good on?
yeah,
Have you gotten all your Rose Bowl thoughts out? You want to shift to the
yeah. I
Sooners?
mean, I'll just give out my Rose Bowl MVP here.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, I mean, probably not a hot take at all, but my Rose Bowl MVP goes to Blake Corum.
Mm-hmm.
He was a stud. He was the workhorse that they leaned on at the end of the game and in overtime when they really needed yards. And he got it. He got all of the yards in overtime. He had some huge runs, and
Probably.
I mean they were lucky. They were lucky to have him because he
Yeah.
was what they were missing last year.
The run, the run to actually get the touchdown in overtime was like was probably the best run I've seen by a running back all year. Just the way he weaved through the offense and the blocking. I'm like, that's a TD play. That's
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
15 yards away, and I'm like, this is a touchdown, and it was.
I mean, 19 carries for 83 yards. I mean, he workhorse in a defense led game like that. He got the gritty yards that they needed at the clutch
I'll give my
times.
MVP to JJ McCarthy. It's easy, but 70 for 27, 221 yards, 3 touchdowns and no picks. What more can you ask for? Was able to manage the offense. It's definitely second in terms of the Blake Corum, in terms of actually winning the game,
Well,
like when it was winning time. But
I'll say this. So JJ lost them the game last year. I mean, I don't think he would even tell you any differently.
I don't think
They
he would
lost
either.
the game
I think he said
because
that actually.
he had some pick sixes and turnovers, and he played pretty bad.
Yeah, he did.
And here he comes out, has a pretty solid game, manages the game, and by the end of it, looked significantly better and more poised in the pocket than Jalen Milroe.
Yep.
So, I mean, he had been there before. He knew what needed to be done. He played the game, and he found his number one target, Roman Wilson, when they needed to. So yeah, I mean, hat off to JJ. I mean, he proved me and a lot of other people wrong in the fact that he could get them here
Yeah.
and lead them to this game. So we'll see what happens with him afterwards. But I
Yeah,
mean, he's
because
definitely proved himself to be a solid college quarterback.
yes, he has. And I'll tell you what, good transition because on the other side of the field with him is going to be a very good Washington team who bested Texas 37-31 in a game where kind of unlike that previous game, for the most part, at least until literally the last minute of the game, Washington looked from the jump like the better team. Texas didn't look like they didn't belong because I said
I don't know. I don't know why I I was stunned at when I was met with resistance at insisting that Washington was going to beat Texas. Like I was told I was an idiot that Washington looked like garbage since November, that they've been struggling. Yeah,
you
it,
that's
a lot
insane.
of people did not expect them. A lot of people did not expect Washington to be able to win this game. I mean, by the time the
I
game
think you're
started,
right.
it was Texas minus 3.5.
Yeah, I don't think that Texas being favored in the game I thought was weird, but I thought okay, 3.5 is basically a coin toss. But Washington balled like for the most of that game. I was like, Washington's been the better team all year. I don't understand what they went through a gauntlet, and I mean a gauntlet of a Pac-12 in its final year of existence to go 13-0 to that point. And we sat here on the show every single week and talked about how this might be the best. They might be coming out of the best conference, top to bottom, in college football this year. If you go from the very top to the very bottom, and I really think you can make that case. And they looked great. I mean, they looked solid from the beginning. I will say this, and I don't mean to jump way to the end of the game. I think a lot of America went to bed and don't realize that Washington was one play away from. We were one play away from another overtime. Because remember
Yes,
because the
yes,
onside kick happens.
yes. We will get to that. We will get
we'll
to
get to
that. But I was like
Yeah, we'll pull it back.
furiously. I was he was asleep, and so I was summarizing essentially what was going on to friend of the show Matt, and I was just like texting my live thoughts like, what what is happening? Like, what is DeBoer doing? What is Ryan Grubbs doing? Like this, they're going to throw this game away. Like they're going to throw this away.
Oh,
Um, yeah, it was bad.
it looked bad down the stretch. I want to
We'll get to that.
I want to give a shout out because I thought Quinn Ewers looked pretty awesome. That deep ball was there in that game. Texas, to Texas's credit, they hung around, man. But I mean, for most, that's why I don't like to count that last little bit of the game because Washington led by a good 10 points for most of the second half, and it wasn't or a few blunders there. Uh,
Yeah.
Texas easily could have tied the game, and I for a split second I thought we were headed for overtime.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was tied at halftime, 21-21.
It was.
And then by
Washington came right out, smacked him in the mouth.
it was 34-21 pretty quickly, and then they sort of let up the gas. I know when that game turned. I know when it turned, and I want to know if you kind of have an idea too.
Mm,
So Washington. So let me make sure that I get this right. So yes.
for me, it wasn't until
So
the fourth quarter, but
it was
depends what you mean by turned. Because
the momentum in the game shifted back to Texas. It was the fumble.
mm-hmm.
Do you remember? It was the who fumbled that? Yes, it was the Jaden Blue fumble.
Yeah.
And they were so Washington was up 34-21. The Texas fumbles the ball at Washington. Washington's like, oh, we can go up 41-21 here. Like, what does this matter? And so they're out here sort of just kind of screwing around, running trick plays.
Yeah,
And the Texas defense
I know what you're
looks
talking
at
about.
them and is just like, are you kidding me? You're running flea flickers and reverses on us. So they come down, tighten up,
The
defense forces a
disrespect.
punt. Yeah, defense forces a punt, and then Texas goes right down to get a touchdown
That was
and
when it
make
flipped.
that a pretty tight game.
I do
late.
remember this. I do remember this. That's right. And honestly, and then they didn't close it out. Like they didn't properly close it out. I thought they were actually going to run.
It
Yeah.
when you're out here up 10, which they were only up like 13, so like it wasn't an insurmountable lead. Uh, so it felt, yeah, it felt like when you're out here running trick plays and not cashing in on them, and then you have to punt, that's a failure.
Yeah,
Like that is it. That is a like the air just gets let out of the balloon, and you have to walk back to the sideline like sort of deflated for a little bit, and try and figure out how you're going to continue winning this game.
true. I mean, I it does make you wonder if they hadn't started like kind of screwing around, if they wouldn't have probably won by more.
I mean that Texas defense looked pretty tired and ready to quit if they weren't like immediately disrespected on the field. Like it felt like everybody was sort of like a little sleepy, and it was just kind of like, all right, I mean, let's just keep
Casen,
trying, I guess. But
Casen is declaring that Texas was like, are these guys for real? Are you kidding me? We're trying to show them up. Hey, and it almost worked.
it almost
Um,
worked. It almost worked.
I'll give my MVP, obviously Michael Penix Jr. He's playing like he should have won the Heisman. I don't want to say that again. He's playing like he should have won the Heisman. Shout out Jaden Daniels, all that. I deserving. Don't get me wrong. And they won their bowl game too. LSU beat Wisconsin. But I was just sitting here thinking to myself, mechanically, he's the best. He's the best quarterback out here. He's the best. He's the best player in college football. Like, 29 for 38, 430 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. And I don't know. I'm a little biased, obviously, because a few shows ago I talked about.
He didn't quite.
Yeah,
He didn't quite break Tim Tebow's Sugar Bowl record of almost 500 yards passing, but
no, only 70 short, but but still, it's a lot of yards still. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Michael Penix Jr. was the story of the game, and I mean, not to discredit Quinn Ewers at all. I mean, Quinn
Quinn
Ewers
Ewers was good.
had 350, like he had almost 300 yards.
If Texas would have won, Quinn Ewers would have been my MVP.
To me, the story of this game was just the Texas defense. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. Big 12 defenses. I mean, that's just what it is.
Well, they're an SEC defense now. That's what I'm just
yeah. Well, yeah, very true.
Officially.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So yeah, I mean, it's just Washington had been tested with the Oregon offense, and they were prepared, and USC too. So they were prepared
for sure,
and they were much more, I think, able to compete with that offense.
So before we roll,
yeah, I'll go ahead and give
give your MVP.
MVP. I obviously Michael Penix Jr., but to be different, I will go ahead and give it to Rome Odunze. Very underrated draft prospect, by the way, because like all of the talk is, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. There's a lot of like, because of Jaden Daniels, there's a lot of Malik Neighbors talk, but Rome Odunze, I think, is going to be a top 10, top 15 pick.
I think we're going to see a lot of draft picks out of these 4 teams, and we're going to be like, I mean, Washington team.
Obviously, yeah.
That's like saying water's wet.
Well,
like it's
yeah. I mean, between these 2 teams, I mean, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy from Texas, huge talent there from the Texas team, going to go in the draft. Adonai Mitchell, they talked a lot about it on the broadcast too, but he was at Georgia, transferred to Texas. He almost won them that game, by the way, which now we can at least address this. So yes, I don't understand what Texas was, or what Washington was thinking when they were not running. They were like not milking the clock down by kneeing it. They were running plays, and the only thing that can't happen happened.
Yes.
And their running back got injured, clock stopped, and now Texas gets the ball with like 45 seconds left.
And I remember thinking to myself, if there's a team that can absolutely go the distance in this amount of time, it's Quinn Ewers in Texas. And it almost happened. I will say the actual, and I swear, I'm like, I bet people saw a final score, and I'm like, people probably turned it off after that onside kick. I swear, it's just one of those things. I will say the actual play that ended the game, shout out to that DB for Washington playing that ball perfectly. I'm like, that, I even saw people say this, that's going to be played in every single defensive room next year at all levels of football. Of this is how you play the ball perfectly on the last play of the game, where he's going to catch, right. It's going to be right in his hands, and he played it perfectly, no interference. Wins a game.
I don't know what Texas was doing. The last set of downs that they had, complete atrocious play calling. Like they
I don't know
were
if it's
they
been
were
atrocious. I'd attribute
they
more to
they
Washington's
wasted
defense.
they wasted two downs on passing straight out to the flat and then going directly out of bounds.
Right.
Like it to me, you don't waste your time with like screen passes like that when you're literally, moments away from losing a playoff game.
Yeah.
So I just go down and score. Like stop being too
We
cute with it.
we don't need to go into the in depth of this, but I think we should predict who's going to win the national championship based on our thoughts on these two games and how these two teams are playing. It'll be this coming Monday. It'll be by our next show. It'll be our leading story. So
Do you want to go first?
I got Washington. I just they've been barring they call a good game and don't let their foot up off the gas. I just think that there's a lot of fundamentals and things that Washington does really really well, and Michigan's solid. I think it's going to be a really good game. But when it
Okay.
comes right down to it, I think that they have a few more key impact players that are going to make a difference.
So I wanted you to go first because I thought you were going to say Michigan because I think Washington too.
Oh, okay, so there
I
you go. Yeah,
I figured you were going to say Michigan. Because I nobody's really giving Washington much of a chance in this game either.
I
I
it would
I
insane to me that you can watch this team play and not do that.
my thought is I don't think Michigan has ever played an offense this like at least this year this potent.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that we're gonna have to maybe they can. I mean their DBs did a great job of guarding downfield and stuff against Alabama, but they're gonna have their work cut out for them against Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, what was Jalen McMillan, I think is the other guy's name. So they're gonna have their work cut out for them. I don't know what's going on with the running back though,
Yeah,
because is Washington just out there starting running back because he got injured at the end of the game?
that
Like, is
is
he out for the year?
that I don't know. Dylan Johnson, you mean?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I really don't know right now, and honestly, news on that has been pretty scarce. I'm sure Washington's doing everything they possibly can to keep that close to the vest. Um, that could be a huge difference, but that passing attack is just so powerful that I just don't think Michigan's going to be ready for it.
Yeah.
I
I
mean, they'll be
mean,
ready for it, but they can't. They'll slow it down, but they can't stop it. Is
I
my
mean,
thinking.
for reference, Roma Dunze had 125 yards. Jalen Polk had 122,
Mm-hmm.
and they both had longest receiving passes over 50 yards. So like those DBs are going to get in the most work they've had all year,
Yep.
and maybe they can keep up.
Maybe they can.
Mike Singerskill is very good. Maybe they can keep up with it. It's just I don't think that they've ever had to do that all year.
Also,
And so
the guys in the box, so to speak, on the defensive side for Washington, I think are going to be able to contain the Michigan running game. That's the other thing. I'm
they
like, that defense is solid.
they have a very good defensive line. Their
Mhm.
edge rushers are very good. What is it? Balin Trice? The he is my number 2 MVP for this game because he was a monster on defense.
Absolutely
He was in Quinn Ewers' face the entire game,
right.
and by the end of it, you could feel that Quinn was playing a little scared.
I
He was
agree.
like expecting to get that guy directly in his face
So,
immediately.
so you heard it here. Washington is who we pick. We'll see if Michigan can shut us up next week, Casen. We'll see. We'll be here to talk about it next week. Do you want to go to the NFL? Because
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it.
we're not going to talk about everything over the last 2 weeks, but I like in our last show of the year, I essentially buried the Steelers, which is why I had to wear the hat today. I'll get into it's part of one of my of the weeks and getting into it. I think there's a lot of reasons, but I just want to shout out again. Mike Tomlin. We're going to be, it's not going to be a losing season again. And that right there is why, from the inside of the organization, word is that it's going to be business as usual because you don't get rid of a guy who can keep doing that. I'm going to get into my team, but that's going to be part of my of the weeks. So I don't want to say anything more than that. Um, I'll let you kind of take the conversation any direction you would like to. NFL, any story you want to talk about, anything at all, Casen. Is there any story you
Um,
want to talk about in the NFL?
I mean, there's a story I would like to at least mention about the a little man named Joe, um, who was a longtime villain in the city of Cleveland.
His beard would suggest that he's been alive a millennia.
Yeah, Grandpa Joe uh
Has seen
has
the
won
darkest days of
has
the NFL and the lightest
Grandpa
days.
Joe Grandpa Joe has won in the Cleveland Browns stadium more than any Browns quarterback in history. Uh and he is the savior that we need. Um
I will go ahead and say this, kind of pun intended. He's my absolute dog of the last 2 weeks. I mean that he is. That's
yeah,
he's
yeah.
my
I
absolute
mean,
dog. Another early of the week. Sorry, y'all. Absolute dog of the last
yeah,
2 weeks.
I
I mean,
so essentially to summarize it, the Cleveland Browns uh it got closer towards the end, but like they just go down and just absolute uh, a you know what to the Jets
out
on
behind the
Thursday night.
woodshed, cooked them,
Yeah,
blew them
they
out, beat
yeah,
them up, stomped on, and straight out
yeah.
punked.
Yeah, they made a mockery of what was left of the New York Jets
Yeah,
in the first half. I mean, like they kind of made it close, but like I mean that game was over at halftime. I mean everybody knows it.
yep.
So
Cleveland Browns cooking with gas, man.
they beat the Jets, clinched the 5 seed, and so now we're gonna get Jeff Driscoll starting against the Bengals. So that's gonna be the
Smart
least
decision, everybody.
watched game of all time.
It will be, but I'll tell
Um,
you what: the fact that the Browns are as banged up as they are and are on this 4 game winning streak, they look genuinely really good.
yeah. So and here's well,
Honestly, the Browns right now in this AFC playoffs are like how I usually feel when the Steelers make it as like a fifth or sixth seed. They're the team you really don't want to see in the first round. Like they're the
yeah.
team I feel that for this year in the AFC playoffs. I'm like, if I was like an upper tier, one of the lower division winners or secondary division players like in the wild card, the team I really don't want to play is the Cleveland Browns right now. That's just me being real, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we have a very talented roster, very injured, but
Very
huge
much.
news because since we get this week off, a lot of guys can get sort of rest up, get
Yeah.
healthy. Amari Cooper didn't play on Thursday because he apparently sort of injured his heel the very first play of the Texans game, in which he ended up setting the franchise record for receiving yards. So he played the entire game injured.
So he kind of gets
But
2 weeks of rest
it
because
was, yeah, he probably could, like, he probably would have played if, like, we absolutely had to win that game. But, so so he gets like another week of rest. Um, it sounds like one of the better pieces on defense, Obo Okawankwo, is back practicing. So he could be back for the playoffs. I think there was rumors that Delpit could be back for the playoffs. So there's a lot of pieces that could be back come playoff time. So we'll have to see what that looks like. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to contain my expectations, but there is a path here. I mean, we're locked into the 5. We're we're playing the winner of the AFC South, whoever that is. And the good thing is we've played them already once and we've beaten everybody.
yeah, and I swear
So
this has been like a shifting dynamic on our show over the course of this year. It's ironic that happened in the same NFL week where your randomized team that you ridiculously did a generator for here on this when you were mad at the Browns middle of the season got beat by the Steelers. Yeah, at home, the Seattle Seahawks. So
yeah,
I suppose
yeah,
this is kind of hey, it's a long season. You wait and see.
yeah, yeah.
We do have to talk about this because the ending of Lions Cowboys, which was a very good game. is marred in some controversy. And unfortunately, the team that has been on the receiving end of a lot of NFL controversies and rule changes because of said controversies over the years, the Detroit Lions lose to the Dallas Cowboys 2019, two of the best teams in the NFC who very well could meet in the playoffs again. Big game, still with the 1 seed up in the air in the NFC. The game ends. It's been a little while since that game happened now, but controversy was that the 2-point conversion that would have won the game for the Lions ended up being flagged because the guy who actually, I want to say it was the guy who actually, not the guy who caught the ball, it was the lineman who was the decoy, correct?
It was the guy who caught the ball because Taylor Decker
did
caught
not
the ball.
Check in.
He was not an eligible receiver, but also because of that, the player who they marked as reporting was inside the line, so he was also marked for illegal formation because they flip-flopped it. But
now what's interesting about this is whenever plays like this are in the playbook, you can go to the officiating crew beginning of like before the game and tell them that you're going to run something. Well, apparently this was discussed with the officiating crew, and it was a by design situation where both linemen went to check in, but only one of them was really checking in. Well, he checked in, and the ref thought it was the other one checking in. So, is it the officials' fault in that regard? I don't know, but I get this particular officiating crew under named Brad Allen, I believe his name, has been marred in some controversies this year. And guess what game he's officiating this Sunday, Casen? Steelers Ravens.
Steelers Ravens.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that. But in all seriousness, I do put this more on the officials if it's true that they did tell them about it pregame. But at the same time, in a year where we've also seen situations where teams have definitely 100% been in the wrong and threw a hissy fit about it afterwards, the Chiefs, I do not put the Lions in that category in this one at all. It's worse because this is also a play that would have won the game.
Yeah. So
it's hard.
Two things with this. So from my understanding, the point of the play was Dan Skipper, the other offensive lineman, had been checking in as eligible the entire game. For for various plays or whatever, the play required him to check in as eligible. And so then when the time came for Taylor Decker to report, he was the decoy, and then Taylor Decker reported. So Brad Allen just assumed it was Skipper again.
It was Skipper again. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's when you got to say, like, no, it's me. Like, breakdown of communication. Like, I understand. I understand both sides.
On the video, Taylor Decker is like this far away from Brad Allen's face, and Dan Skipper is like over 10 yards away.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see him mutter something, and it's like he totally thought that's exactly what happened. Like, totally a miscue here. And to the official, okay, that guy never checked in. He can't catch a ball. In
my head, what I think happened was Taylor's came up and said reporting. So here's the other thing. There are two things. You need to gesture with your hands. That's the other key part with it.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that you need to come up and say reporting and do this sort of motion. And it kind of seems like Taylor did that, but the ref is staring at Dan Skipper. And so what I think happened was, because he had been saying number 70 all day, that Taylor came up and said it. He was staring at 70. 70 was in his brain. And so he just said 70. Like, whether or not he registered it was a different person, I think he just said 70 because that's what was happening all day.
Yeah.
And so
in actuality, it was a really good call by the Lions. Let me just go ahead and say
it was a good call because it worked. It worked.
And it worked because they were covering the guy who'd been checking in and then the guy who was supposed to have checked in, at least the refs supposedly, caught the game-winning pass.
Well,
it should have worked.
It should have worked. Good call. It was a good call because the wrong guy was reported as eligible. So here's the other thing, though, too. Is that I am willing to concede that the Lions have the blame on this for this. One, after the game, and it was, I think, yesterday, the league put out a video basically sort of reminding teams using this game footage on how to report. And essentially they were saying you can't try and deceive the opponent. Like, they were saying the Lions were at fault for even trying to do this.
Mm.
Which, if you're gonna do that, whatever, fine. You can concede that they were at fault for trying to be
I don't
tricky about it.
know. Yeah.
But two, when you're lined up on the line and you hear Brad Allen say number 70 reporting, and that's not Taylor Decker's number,
you cease to you cease to be in the right on this one. Yeah.
Like you have time. Like Dan Campbell should have ran up to Brad Allen and said, hello, that is not the number that reported.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they had any timeouts left. It would have been kind of ridiculous for them to have to be required to use them. But like, either way, like I know it was loud. They might not have heard it, but I mean, if they would have, you would think they would have realized, wait a minute, he didn't announce Taylor Decker as eligible.
Nope.
So then maybe they would have, if Jared would have heard it, maybe he could have audible to something different. I don't know, but
I think there was an avenue.
It's a tricky situation. It's a tricky situation.
It's a tricky situation, and unfortunately, they got bitten by kind of a number of things. Either way,
that does not excuse them from failing 2 consecutive 2-point conversions after that.
I was going to say they did have it. They, again, sort of like that Chiefs game we talked about against the Bills. You had opportunities to still do it, guys, and you should have, and you didn't.
I obviously Dan Campbell's going to be aggressive. We know that, but in my head, you're just not in the right headspace to do a 2-point conversion after everybody's screaming at the refs for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
like everybody's screaming, confused. They don't understand what's happened, and they go back out, line up from the 7. Are you serious?
Yeah.
And they get bailed out.
Yep.
And then they're like, "Oh, let's go forward again." What?
Right, and it makes you right, and at that point, it makes you wonder if they shouldn't have kicked it. Right. Hard to say, but what's the old adage? You go for the tie. You go for the tie at home, on the road, and on the road, you go for the win.
Go for the win on the road. Tie it. Yeah,
tie at home. So that's still the old football cliche. There is another game I want to talk about, but it's part of my of the weeks. If we've talked about kind of our big stories in the NFL, is there anything you want to for sure touch on before we go into the last bit here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a big one, the Ravens-Dolphins game.
Yeah. Destruction of the week.
Dolphins were injured. Tyreek didn't play. There were, I think, some other significant injuries from the Dolphins as well, but they got absolutely beat down once again by the Ravens, 56-19. Yeah, Ravens were motivated to get the 1 seed, and they locked that one up.
Locked it right up. Yep. Yep. So with that, go ahead.
Another story that just needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Jaguars beat the Carolina Panthers 26-0.
They did.
That was not the storyline of this game.
No, it was not. What was
the storyline of this game? Was the newly appointed worst owner in sports, David Tepper, threw a hissy fit in his box after they lost in such horrific fashion, and he ended up tossing his drink at a Jags fan, and he was subsequently fined by the league $300,000,
which is nothing. I really
nothing to the guy, no.
Right? I mean, my thing is, fines are one thing for a player because players are very much paycheck to paycheck, even the ones I get all that. And if you keep fining them, they'll get the message. For owners, you need to suspend them for them to actually take a discipline from it, because you got to
suspend them from what? Going to their games?
From a game. From a game. You got to suspend them at least once, because that's the one thing that's the one thing a league to maintain its integrity can do to discipline its owners. It's like when they gave.
Is that a punishment though?
I mean, it's
you can't come to the game.
It's more of a tangible punishment than fining them. That's basically like you did nothing.
If you want to send the message, you withhold a percentage of shared revenue.
Oh, well, that's
like
so you take the other way, like a lot more money.
None of these owners are going to ever agree to this. But if you want to actually punish owners for doing like conduct detrimental to the league, like you have to like start withholding 10% or whatever percent of their share of the revenue split.
That's really hitting them in the pocketbook. That's yeah.
Like,
Actually, though,
like if you start basically saying you're not going to get $20 million, that's going to be a bit of a message. Like,
more than a bit of a message. Yeah. So you're saying the fine needs to be larger, much larger.
or start actually like punishing them in the football sense for the activities of the owner. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, forfeit a draft pick.
See that?
Like,
And
if
see
an
that's
owner is basically assaulting a
a
fan,
fan. Yes.
I mean, if that's not justifying revoking a draft pick, I don't know what is.
That's true, and that runs into the thing of, are you punishing the players when you do that? It's hard to say, but it's different than college. You never want to get into a
Yeah.
situation where the players are necessarily being like punished per se, but this is a business. Like, yeah, if you do something like that, you should receive more disciplinary action than that, especially when it's like the worst look for a sports owner we've seen in a long time. I mean, conduct stuff like this. I mean, I think of stuff like Donald Sterling, and when stuff like that came out, and it was a different situation. I'm not trying to make that comparison, but what I am saying is that it's very rare though that you see a very viral moment from one of the prominent, one of the 32 in the NFL. There's only 32 owners.
Yeah.
So publicly look so bad. It was just like, it was shocking, to be honest. And yeah, keep your eyes on that, because the Dan Snyder comparisons are inevitably happening. So
Well, I mean, his entire tenure as the owner, he's owned the team for 3 years, and the entire tenure has just been marred in controversy after controversy. I maybe four, but I mean, basically, it started with their weird facility thing that was revoked their permits or something, and it had to get like torn down halfway done.
yeah,
And he immediately, like, he buys the team, fires Ron Rivera, makes Ron Rivera, maybe he was just willing to do it, but allows Ron Rivera to just sit up there and do a post firing press conference. Like, just the weirdest look for a coach who generally was pretty well, like, appreciated by the town and fan base. And
yeah,
so this is going to be essentially his fourth head coach since he's owned
in
the
in
the,
his
the team.
in like almost as many years. Yeah, it's
So I
it's a tough job. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know if I sent this to you, but yeah, I mean, somebody made a great point that this actually might be the best job opening of the job openings, because David Tepper is going to pay you $50 million and he's going to fire you in 6 months. Like,
It's the adage of like the Jimbo Fisher thing, right? It's like, well, it's like, hey, let's make sure my buyout's big if I'm taking this. Like, this just
so yeah, I
absolutely
mean,
a good
he's
agent
going to pay you $50
negotiate me a
million.
contract. Yeah,
Yeah.
negotiate me a contract that gets me $100 million if I get fired in X amount of time.
Yeah,
Um,
and nobody's ever going to blame you. They're going to say, "Oh, it didn't work for David Tepper."
that's
Like,
honestly, depending on the business side of what you're looking at, that's a really good point, Casen. This might be the best job.
I mean, I know we talked about it before, but like, I mean, maybe that is the job to take, because if you fail, no one's going to blame you, and if you succeed, cool.
You
Like, I
get all the
mean,
praise. Yeah. Hard to say. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. Let's get into of the weeks, because you've listened. Those who normally listen and view our show have heard a few of mine already, but I still have some others. Um, Staying in the NFL, I really do want to just talk about this. My seized opportunity of the last 2 weeks, that award for me this week goes to Mason Rudolph, mainly just because this guy is weirdly now been with the. He's the most tenured Steelers quarterback on the roster, and it's just so interesting because it just feels like he's gotten the short end of the stick his entire time with the Steelers. From, he couldn't perform. Comes in. Ben's not thrilled that he's there. Um, he's pretty public about it. To a point where they never really had a relationship. To then he had the incident with Myles Garrett, and he had that happen. He didn't necessarily play well the year that Ben went down, so that was really his opportunity, and he got replaced by Devlin Hodges, and he comes into the game against the Bengals, who, don't get me wrong, are a downtrodden team, but that was actually the day I got back to the Pittsburgh area watching that game, and the offense is looking better than they've looked in like 4 years. And it's just and then he's continued to look pretty good uh against Seattle. But there was a point in that Cincinnati Bengals game where the stadium was chanting his name, and they showed Kenny Pickett during that too. And I thought, well, some producer there is getting what's happening here potentially. But now there's a legitimate possibility that we're going to have a quarterback battle this coming off season between these two guys. And I don't know. I just think there's something to be said for the stick to itiveness of it, the perseverance, the fact that, you can work for so long in this league and never really be, somewhat appreciated. And all it takes is really one opportunity. And, yeah, so it's the feel good story going on with my team right now.
Yeah, yeah. I
Nowhere
mean,
near
and
Flacco, but yeah.
yeah. Well, and sort of to go along with that, my confusing potential drama situation of the week is the Steelers quarterback room.
Mm.
I mean, do you know any more about what's going on there? Because the story, I mean, I don't know what's true and what's not, but the story is that basically Kenny Pickett didn't like he said I'm not playing, or I'm not sitting behind Rudolph, so he just didn't dress.
There is there I that's essentially what I've heard as well. In my little Twitter spheres of which I follow a lot of people from the Western PA media, right? Um, Kenny's trying to squash that story hard, but the thing is, a lot of people are like saying there's a lot of truth to it. Um, I it it's one of those things where publicly they're saying the right things. It's like, yeah, but like all the sources are saying like that definitely happened. Does that make sense? Like it's in that
Mm.
stage right now. They're saying that that's not the case, that it was like one of those things. But the thing that's weird is like even when Kenny was trying to like say the situation to the media, he kind of indicated that like his ankle was like good enough to go, which again I don't think is what he meant to really say. He kind of alluded to it. So it's like, okay, just lie. You're trying to squash the
I
story.
thought I thought Tomlin verified that he was cleared to play.
I did not hear that, but
Oh, okay, okay.
I see. I've heard mixed there. I've heard that like they've said that he was going and that they wanted to that he picked Mason Rudolph with the possibility of Kenny being an option is essentially what happened. And I think they tried to play it off like Kenny didn't dress because he still wasn't fully healthy, and that's like kind of the narrative they're going with. But um, regardless, there's drama there, is there not? There definitely is. There
Hmm.
absolutely is over the course of this season, and the frustration and the Canada stuff and all that. But the reality of the situation is Kenny hasn't played well this year either. You know, even their circumstances right now. I mean, how has Mason Rudolph come in and looked better than you've looked in like the last year and a half, Kenny Pickett? Like, I don't know. It just
Yeah, I mean there's also the stat that Joe Flacco has more touchdowns than Kenny had does his entire career.
yeah. I mean,
Mm.
it's I don't know. To me, there's a tangible. To me, we shouldn't be starting you right now. Is just kind of how it's gone. I'm sorry, it's a tough business, but
I mean,
um,
I think we've generally seen enough that it's trending in the direction that he just ain't it.
the
I
reason
mean, there.
the other reason it's a big story among the Pittsburgh media is that Tomlin has said before on several occasions that he's not a coach that lets a guy lose his job due to injury. That's also why everyone's making a big deal about this, because like
Mhm.
Tomlin has said that more than once in the past, and that's essentially what has happened here. Is it not? I mean, is it not
Yeah.
what's happened here? I mean, is it by any other definition what's happened here? So I don't know. It's hard to say, but that I think is also why a lot of these journalists, case and the beat writers are really pushing him on this story. I mean, so stick a pin in that one. That's definitely something I think we'll be talking about again in the next couple weeks. So
Yeah.
that was a good 1-2 punch there for another of the weeks. Um, let's see here. I told you that my absolute dog of the week, shout out the newest dog, so to speak, dog pound, Joe Flacco. Um, I wanted to pull this out. I have a mascot of the week. You ready for this?
Oh yeah.
The Pop Tart Bowl. That was
Oh
the
yeah.
that was the funnest. That was by far the funnest story of the holiday season. If you're not referring, one of the new bowls is the Pop Tart Bowl. Its trophy's incredible. It's like essentially like a toaster with made out of a football made out of a toaster. Um, or the other way around. It's got Pop-Tarts sticking out of it. But what I couldn't believe, they have this Pop-Tart mascot that's around all the game, the whole game. And if you've seen it on the internet, and listeners or viewers, if you have not seen this, please go look it up after our show. They the winning team, they lower the mascot into the toaster, and then it comes out the side. It's not the real mascot, it's a different one, but it's an edible trophy. They turned him into an edible trophy. And literally the winners were scooping the icing off and eating him. And they all, like all the players, coaches, staff, all took like a handful, to the point where, he was just barren at the end. But I was like, there's something incredibly dark about this. Like, I could not believe that was how they chose to do that. I was like, I feel like someone's definitely going to complain. This is awesome, but I feel like someone's definitely going to complain about this.
It was the greatest thing. The greatest thing.
It was now, so good.
Don't say what it is, but I just want you to react on the air, the text that I just sent you.
Yeah, I can't say what that is. Hit us up off the air for that one. That is. Oh, Casen, you find more of the wildest thing. I will say, for our viewers, listeners out there, Casen will send me at least 3 things a week that make me laugh until I cry. Like, your actual sports, like, sense of humor and memes and the stuff you find, every time I have like an image from you or a TikTok or a tweet, it's like usually the funniest. So that's twice today, because you sent me a tweet earlier today about something else that also made me lose my mind. Anyway, yeah, mascot of the week goes to the Pop-Tart mascot of the Pop-Tart Bowl.
Just terrific stuff. I was dying at that too. Watching that.
Like marketing exec or inside the it was Kansas State and NC State, by the way, and Kansas State was the team doing it. Kansas State.
Yeah. So in response,
someone's
to that,
a genius. Someone got a raise. Someone's a genius.
100%. And in response to that, the Cheez-It Bowl mascot was holding up a sign that was like, "I'm not an edible mascot."
Yeah.
And then people on Twitter were like, "I'm sorry, but that's not up to you to decide."
Yeah. Like, who says if you're actually edible? Who's saying we're not going to do that at the end? That is so. That was by far probably the funnest story of bowl week. Trying to see if I have another one here. I have a forgotten to mention of the week. But if you have one, let's do yours first.
I've got my dog of the week. My dog of the week goes to a gentleman who just did a live stream for 36 hours trying to hit a hole-in-one on a golf simulator, and that goes to Jersey Jerry from Barstool.
Oh wow!
I did. He had like 2,600 stroke attempts to try and hit a hole-in-one on this golf simulator on, I think it was hole 7 of Pebble Beach. And it was just hilarious. And it blew up this morning to the point where you had Tom Brady tweeting about it. And
that's cool.
And the Live Tour and the PGA Tour videos tweeting about it. And it was hilarious.
Shout out Jersey Jerry in general. He's like one of my favorite Yinzers.
And in his speech after he did it, he was like, I just hope that this gets me dinner with TJ Watt. And TJ Watt was like, yeah, sure.
That's awesome.
Because JJ was watching it, and he was like, yeah, I'll put in a good word with TJ about it, basically. And yeah, it was hilarious.
It also helps, again, that Jersey Jerry is a huge Steeler fan. So, like massive Steeler fan.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. I also have a friend from back home who's a massive Jersey Jerry fan. So, that's awesome. We forgot to mention this of the week. Shout out to the Columbus Crew, because we talked about them 2 shows ago, and we had the break in the middle, and they won the MLS Cup almost a month ago now, for their 3rd star. But we talked about it with friend of the show, Nate, and we forgot to mention it on our last show of the week, or of the year 2023. So
yeah, I just thought we did.
We did not. We did not mention it. I listened back to our shows here and there, and I was like, man, we did not mention the Crew.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, like completely. Yes. Shout out the Crew. Casen's holding the hat up. Yeah. Incredible. And I actually said this to Nate, and I said this to a few more people. Welcome to Wrexham and Columbus Crew SC. Very similar vibes in what's happened with as organizations.
Yeah.
Very similar vibes is what happens in terms of, owners for right reasons. Obviously, they're very different stories, but the stories of success and what they were facing and all that stuff, and how the communities come together. I mean, Are the Columbus Crew the best organization top to bottom in MLS right now? Probably. They're certainly doing
Well,
things
I
right. They're
yeah, I
one of
mean,
them.
we talked a lot about it. I mean, and I think I credit where credit's due. I mean, I think that there were a lot of lessons learned in the early days of their sports ownership, but the Haslams, I think, particularly D, learned a lot about what it takes to be an owner and what the wrong things to do are. And it seems like they managed to get off on the right foot with the
Also,
crew.
I got to give a shout out to the state of Ohio, because going back to the same piece of legislation that was put in place when Modell moved the Browns is what saved the Crew. Literally,
Mhm.
is what saved the Crew, and that just goes to show that, like, that's why you make legislation like that. For the
Yeah,
betterment of the community. And I mean, honestly,
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely. I mean,
we gauze laws
I
all the time
hope
for the bad stuff. I just want to say something for
I
something good.
hope I really do hope that every other state that has sports teams does this for things like we're seeing with the Athletics. Like the Athletics have been in Oakland
Oh yeah,
for what, 60 years.
yeah.
And if this type of legislation was in California, like you would think they would have done something like this after the whole Raiders debacle. But yeah, that just goes to show that like you need to protect yourselves, because if you have publicly funded stadiums and publicly funded, you know, basically publicly funded teams, because they're
Yep,
using your facilities,
yep.
like they're benefiting from your money, so you can keep them there.
Absolutely. So, shout out to Crew. That was my last of the week.
Yeah, I think that that's great stuff. The only other one is my team of uh out of the playoffs of the week, and that goes to the Philadelphia Eagles
That was
for losing
thank
once again.
thank you, Casen. That was my upset of the week. See, completely forgot it. Upset of the week was the Cardinals over the Eagles.
Yeah, I think the Eagles are dead. Their hopes are probably gone. Because now they look bad. They've not been playing great. They're basically limping into the playoffs.
I,
And I think at this point they're going to be the 5 seed playing. So they're going to end up beating the Buccaneers or Saints, I think. Um, whoever wins that division. So they're going to end up beating them more than likely, but then they're going to end up losing to. I think it would be the Cowboys. I'm not sure. I'm not.
the Cowboys would beat them. The Lions would beat them.
Yeah, basically anybody else they're going to play in the
San
next
Francisco
round
has
would beat
beaten
them.
them to sleep.
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
I say what we will, because we have to mention them, because we mention them every week. Say what we will about the Buffalo Bills, who have like done the opposite of the Eagles in a lot of ways. That like win against the Bills
They're
like cooked their team. They completely off
well.
the rails.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. So the point in time in which the Eagles basically, I guess I would say, their season ended was Monday. Yeah, I guess it was the Bills probably, but it was pretty much about that, because it's like they had to play the Chiefs and the Bills back to back, and those two wins basically broke them as a team,
They broke them, and then
because
San Francisco just absolutely destroyed them at
they have
home.
one win
Yeah,
over a really bad Giants team, and that's it. Like they've looked really bad since Thanksgiving.
yeah. I'll be surprised if they. Yeah, I'll be very surprised if they're still sticking around. You know, into
They're
the
gonna benefit. Yeah, they're gonna get the benefit of playing, the worst divisional winner.
but then
And
they're gonna
so
have to go on the
yeah,
road everywhere. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
so cool. Not cool for Eagles fans, but we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. Was that your last of the week? Because I just want to talk about one more thing.
Yeah. I think that pretty much summed it up. There's a lot set. I'll just kind of run through here
Mm-hmm.
where we stand before we move on. So the playoffs,
Sure.
as they stand, let me get this pulled up. So the playoffs as they stand, we have locked in 1 seeds Baltimore and 49ers. And so then Kansas City, I think, is pretty much locked into the 3. Uh Bills, wild turn of events because the Bills are heading into Sunday where they could be the 2 seed or out of the playoffs.
Yes, that's a very yeah. I'm actually glad you're mentioning that
Absolutely wild.
because that is
Like that
wild to
is
me. Yeah.
that is wild. So we'll see how that goes. But the Dolphins are in either as the 2 or a wild card. Jags are right now in, but there's a lot that could happen, and they could lose the division. They could be out of the playoffs. A lot that could happen with that one. Um, so we'll see where that goes. And then the other side, yeah. So it's Niners 1 seed, and then Cowboys, Detroit, and more than likely the Buccaneers, but potentially the Saints, and the Eagles, Rams, and Packers or Seahawks probably at the 7 seed.
Yep.
So a lot of stuff still up in the air. And there's a lot of teams basically resting everybody. So really, really interesting last week of the season here.
Hey, it usually is, right? Week 18 is going to be week 18. Or more to the point, week 18 gonna week 18. It's more like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you, Casen, for that. I wanted to just run through this little bit of news here before I go to the movie review I have in mind here. There's rumors. I don't want this isn't based on anything substantiated, but it was brought to my attention that there are rumors that the upcoming return of the college football video game, NCAA football, whatever it's going to be called from EA Sports, may or may not have some sort of sneak peek, something happening during the national championship game. I just want to throw that into existence into a microphone just so people who tune in, who care about that, of which we are 2 of those people.
There's a lot of people bringing that up.
There's a lot of smoke, but there's not a there's
yeah.
no
I don't know if
yet.
I don't know if we're gonna get some sort of quite like teaser trailer. Maybe we'll get a cover announcement,
right?
Because I think this would be the perfect stage to announce the cover. Have some have some like live thing on the halftime show announcing this is the cover athlete for college football, and it's basically going to be potentially whoever won the Heisman or whatever. But there's a lot of directions they could go with this game. Curious where they go with it. But anyway, I hope it's true, and I hope we get some more information because I'm really excited about the game.
I'm excited. I think a lot of people are excited about the games, and as I've joked with a lot of people, I'll tell you what, ladies of the world, your significant other of any kind may disappear in July of 2024 when that game comes out. I'm only kind of joking. It's one of those video. It's one of those video games where it's one of those video games that so many guys are going to play, mainly men. But a lot of people, all demographics love college football.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So it's going to be. It's sell well.
I do want to at least take a moment to address my recruits. If any of you players want to come play for me in my program at Southern Miss, I want you to know that I do not tolerate any of the transfer portal or NIL stuff. That does not work with the way I'm building my program. I am building my program on God's name, image, and likeness, and we will operate as such.
Okay,
we are only recruiting high school kids, no transfer portal, no buying of players. Good old fashioned high school.
I got to pull this microphone up. So, Coach Sweeney, are you saying that you're going to lose every game? That's my that's my immediate question. Okay. So you're just going to lose every single game. Okay.
Yeah.
And that stuff being in the game is going to be wild. I don't know how they're going to deal with that, but it's going to be incredible.
Yeah. I'm Coach Dabo Saban is going to be the head coach of the Southern Miss Eagles. Golden Eagles, is that what they are? Golden Eagles?
Random team.
I don't know. I just randomly picking teams here, but it's going to be very curious because there's a lot of jokes on Twitter about.
It's going to be insane.
Gonna be running.
Real quick too. The other thing, there's another thing that's going to come out, or at least begin. I don't really know what the plan is for it. Between now and our next show, Casen, Echo is going to drop on January 9th, and the marketing of this has been insane. I mean, insane in the sense of they are not pulling punches that this is a mature show. Um, viewer
Yeah.
discretion advised. It is a not a. I think that's also why they waited till January, because they didn't want this situation of,
Yeah.
they didn't want the idea. They'd rather you be watching Marvel What Ifs season 2, of which I've yet to
Yeah.
really delve in. They didn't want Echo to drop, and you're dropping that, and families are watching that.
Yeah.
I really believe that's why they made that choice. Um, so we'll check it out. I mean, I'll try to check it out. No guarantee. I think we'll do a full review of it at some point. It's a mini series, right? So
I yeah, they're all dropping at the same time,
yeah,
right?
the whole
Yeah.
thing I think is at once.
Yeah.
So
So we'll do a review when we both seen the whole thing. Um
all I will say is they're like canonizing the Daredevil show, which is a great idea. They've also
mhm.
said that like Kingpin is going to be like the street level equivalent of Thanos, which I'm like, thank you, because Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin as Wilson Fisk is one of my favorite castings in any Marvel project. He's a very scary villain. Um,
Oh,
same,
yeah, I mean,
same
great
goes with
actor. Yeah.
great actor. Same goes for Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock.
Mhm.
But it's going to be cool to get to learn more about this character Echo.
So here's my question though, was
Sure.
that it'll be very curious where what happens, because the new Daredevil series was supposed to be basically like rebooting the Daredevil stuff, but if they're just canonizing the show,
They're not going to do that.
I,
Well, we know
I don't know. Yeah.
we know the whole creative direction of that show has completely changed, right? So
Yeah.
So we have so Daredevil Born Again, we're maybe they'll canonize some stuff using this show and canonize some stuff using Daredevil. We'll see. But I'm excited to get into it. Last thing I'll say, I got a chance to see the movie with my mom and a friend of hers, Boys in the Boat. Saw that over the Christmas holiday. Have you heard of this movie, Casen?
I have not actually.
Not surprised. It was one of those movies that dropped. Boys in the Boat is based on the book of the same name that came out in 2013. It is the story about the rowing team for the United States out of the University of Washington. I was going to bring that back around here in
Mhm.
1936 that won the gold in Berlin. It's the story. The book is actually the longer story told from at the time the only surviving member of the team, Joe Rance, is who the movie's actually from the perspective of. About it takes you in the book takes you all the way from the formation of the team out of the depression and the fact that they got the 9 guys and them going through a whole 2 years of a Washington schedule and the way they build the boats and they went to the East Coast and but like this team was always just incredible, right? And it honestly the best way I can describe it is Boys in the Boat. The movie is basically a miracle for rowers, and I mean that in a
Yeah.
positive way. Really good movie. It's all based on history. Um, I'd say if you're going to watch a trailer for it, don't watch too much of it because my one criticism of it is that I think they show a little too much in the trailer. But it's a movie that there's a book that I'm going to also read at some point as well. But from everyone, the adaptation of the book, I mean, it was a great film. It's one of those movies that kind of its main criticism is that it has a lot of the sports cliches in it, but
Mhm.
it's that for rowers in a lot of ways. But it was a very good movie, and I just wanted to give it a shout out as well. If I had to rate it out of our 1 through 10, I'd give it like a 7, 7.5. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
could push it to an 8 if I'm really lenient. It was solid.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I'm not surprised that you hadn't heard about that, just because they push marketing a lot during Christmas time. Like it was one of those things where I swear I saw it so much on my Instagram, on TikTok, places like that. You could tell they're like, oh, we're gonna try to really push it for the holiday season. Also directed by George Clooney. Another interesting tidbit about the movie. So
Hmm.
yeah. So check it out,
Interesting.
folks. I recommend it. Check it out. Check out the book and check out this. Or just in general, look the story up because it's kind of incredible. Um, so yeah, shout out to the 1936 Washington Huskies rowing team. Uh,
Awesome. Awesome.
that's what I got, man. This was a loaded show. It's almost 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. A lot to talk about.
We got a lot to catch up on,
And
but hey, big year ahead. First show of 2024. Um, we thank everybody so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate you. And yeah, that's all I got. I'm talked out, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, we will, I guess, be back here next week to talk about the championship game, talk about playoff
Playoffs.
preview. Yeah. We've got some other segments coming down the pike too, so
You're
we'll
gonna
keep
you're
an eye
gonna
out for
get
that.
our anticipated movies of the you're gonna get our anticipated movies of 2024. It's just with this show we had other stuff to talk about, and also we had a few of those shows from the playoffs where we only talked about like it, where college football's over, and we got to talk about it, and we'll talk about anticipated movies. You'll get them. It just Casen went along with me where I'm like, let's save that for like the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll be
So
like in two
trust me,
weeks.
we're talking about ideas. So we've got plenty of stuff in the works. So uh keep keep an eye out and ear out and we'll get on that one.
Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you. And yeah, this is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And we will see you as always at the next stop.